The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a big-budget connected franchise based on Marvel's iconic superhero comics. Not only is it one of the most financially successful movie series ever made, but it's also gained a huge dedicated fanbase who remain loyal to every release. However, it's not been without its criticism, with a lot of folks calling out the franchise for being too formulaic, and there's also been backlash towards Marvel's crunching of their visual effects artists. Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. In this video, I'm going to be counting down my personal picks for the top 5 best and worst Marvel Cinematic Universe feature films, starting with my worst list. Okay, so I know that a lot of people dislike Iron Man 3. While I get its problems and understand where people are coming from, I can't say that I hate it. I find the Mandarin's twist to be hilarious, I think that its portrayal of PTSD is very authentic, and I like Tony's bond with the little kid. Iron Man 2 though, yeah, that's going on my worst list. Tony is going for a lot right now. Not only is he dying from palladium poisoning, but he's also up against a villain called Whiplash, and tech business rival Justin Hammer. All of this stress leads to him ruining his life, just after appointing Pepper as the new CEO of Stark Industries. I feel like Iron Man 2 embodies the aspect of the MCU that I dislike the most. Over-ambition. I can appreciate high ambitions, but Iron Man 2 is so overplotted that it frustrates me to no end. There's just too much going on in this movie, to the point where I kept asking myself what this film wanted to even be about. It uses the excuse of Tony's downfall to go completely nuts with conflicts, obstacles and challenges for Iron Man, resulting in messy chaos from start to finish.
Wait!
That's another thing that bugs me. You see, I loved how the first Iron Man totally nailed the hero's journey arc for Tony, so it annoys me how this sequel presses the restart button and lets the once redeemed Mr. Stark turn into an insufferable arrogant jerk all over again.
The after party starts in 15 minutes. And if anybody, Pepper, doesn't like it, there's the door.
What blows the film even more is that this sequel becomes the vessel for introducing Black Widow and S.H.I.E.L.D. in a shoehorned setup for what will eventually be the building blocks for the Avengers. Let this movie breathe, dang it! So how could have Iron Man 2 been better? Well, it should have just picked one plot line, like the rivalry between Tony and Justin, or Tony on a search to find a cure for himself, and made that the meat of the film. Plus, help us sympathise with Tony more by dropping the whole falling back into bad habits shtick. Lastly, save any foreshadowing for the Avengers movie for the post-credits. The more times I've watched Iron Man 2, the more I've grown to dislike it. It's such an overblown jumble of stuff happening. The Incredible Hulk. After Dr. Bruce Banner agrees to a gamma radiation experiment, he transforms into the Dangerous Hulk, causing casualties and destruction. So Bruce escapes to a life from Brazil, where he becomes a labor worker. Unfortunately, the military tracks him down, following orders to steal his Hulk blood for a super soldier project. With help from his old flame, Betty Ross, Bruce must find a cure for his curse. I actually often forget that this film is part of the MCU, and I can see why most Marvel fans skip it on marathons. It really is the most vanilla MCU movie made to date, doing nothing more than following the cliche beats of Hollywood monster movies. It has a promising start as we follow Bruce's life from Brazil, and the lengths he goes to avoid becoming the Hulk or spreading his mutation. But once the army attacks, it just dissolves into typical military versus monster action.
Let him have all of it.
The introduction of British Marine Emil Blonsky, who volunteers to become the ultimate super soldier to fight the Hulk, throws a little spice into the bland soup by being a worthy human to fight the Green Beast.
Is that it?
But that idea becomes a little less interesting once he mutates into a generic monster for Hulk to battle in the finale.
You don't deserve this power. Now watch your death!
It's pretty tough to say how this film could have been better, but I personally think that the film is at its peak when we're in Brazil. Watching an undercover Bruce Banner trying to live a normal life in a foreign culture while keeping hold of a deep secret and finding a cure with limited resources was totally enough to engage me as an audience member. Just commit to making the opening of this film into the feature story and you would have had a fresh movie take on the Hulk, I think. For the Dark World. When Dr. Jane Foster finds a bunch of portals in a London abandoned factory, she ends up being teleported to a hidden world where she's contaminated with the legendary ether. Jane safely returns to Earth, where she finally reunites with Thor, who takes Jane to Asgard for help. Sadly, the ether can't be removed from Jane. Suddenly, the Dark Elves, who crave the power of the ether, come after Jane. Thor's mother tries to protect Jane with an illusion spell, but is tragically killed. So Thor reluctantly teams up with his brother Loki to expel the ether from Jane and take on the Dark Elves. Many folks consider this film to be the weakest entry in the MCU, and I can 100% understand the backlash. It's a pretty bad film. Look, I'm all for a Dark Thor movie, but what we got was pretty dang dull and weak. It really wants to be the serious melodrama, but it never earned my admiration or respect, because nothing really happens. The whole affair can be best described as a Viking soap opera.
And how are you different from Malekith?
The difference, my son, is that I will win.
We also spend a lot of the film in the empty and dank dark world, or a miserable cloudy London. So there's very little to compensate for all the meandering somberness. And we also get the worst MCU villain to date, Malekith, a stone-faced dark elf who I often forgot was even in the film. The filmmakers cast the eccentric Christopher Eccleston in the role, but I didn't even know it was him, because his performance is so boring. Imagine wasting a Doctor Who actor this badly.
Look at me.
The only saving grace in this tedious flick has to be Loki, who brings some campy humour to a very sleepy movie.
If you even think about betraying him.
You'll kill me? Evidently there will be a line.
However, this film is also Marvel's first attempt at giving the God of Mischief his own sympathetic redemption story. Something I'll never go along with, because genocidal tyrants don't deserve second chances.
Oh, you fool, you didn't listen. I'm a fool. I'm a fool.
Stay with me, okay?
I'm kind of unsure how this film can be improved because there's very little here to work with, but I guess the film could have been better if Loki was the one after the ether, a character who excels best as an evil villain, and things would be even more personal than ever because the God of Mischief would be after Thor's love of his life. For the Dark World might not be the #1 worst MCU film to me, but it sure was a high contender. Black Widow. Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, ends up getting back in touch with her fake childhood family after realizing that the criminal behind the cult that brainwashed her into an assassin is still alive. When I decided to make this video, I thought that nothing could top For the Dark World for my worst list. But boy was I wrong. Black Widow always wanted her own solo movie. I mean, she is an Avenger. But unfortunately, this movie was made way too late into the franchise, coming out just after a character was killed off in Endgame. Natasha has always been the supporting player in other hero stories or event movies too, so this was her chance to finally be the star. But nope, Marvel still doesn't trust her to carry her own film, and gave her a fake family to co-star with. I'm sorry, but I never felt on board with any of the family drama, because these lot are depressingly dysfunctional, and their bond is founded on a toxic fake environment. No matter how the film flipped it, I was not into these characters reuniting.
Did I do something wrong?
Is that a serious question?
I only ever loved you girls. I did my best to make sure you would succeed, to achieve your fullest potential, and everything worked out.
Everything worked out?
Yes. For you, yes.
The film also offers very little in terms of Black Widow's origin story. The Red Room, the secret abusive assassin training club that Natasha was forced into, is mentioned by word, but never really shown. It's more of a background fodder for the mission. Owen Dreykov, the mastermind behind the Red Room, is awfully disappointing as a villain. He's just this grumpy old Russian man who rambles exposition, giving away his weaknesses to Natasha. I thought that cliche was dead.
You're in trouble.
How are you controlling me?
I'm not controlling you, Natasha. Well, not yet. But there is a pheromonal lock. Smelling my pheromones that prevents you from committing violence against me.
Sever the nerve.
The film tries to compensate for this with Dreykov's daughter, the Taskmaster, but she's just the shallow trope of cool badass in a mask, and her sad backstory goes to waste. Black Widow should have been released in the early days of the Infinity Saga. It could have been this dark and gritty film about a younger Natasha's time in the Red Room and how she escaped. But no, we were handed a generic spy thriller co-starring a boozy washed-up Captain America parody. Great. Eternals. This film follows 10 superheroes who have been assigned to look over humanity by the grand celestial being Arishem. However, it later turns out that Arishem only made the Eternals to farm humans, so that Earth can be used to create a new celestial. Eternals was honestly the hardest MCU film for me to sit through. Don't get me wrong, I respect Marvel for giving us a diverse cast. It's awesome seeing a superhero movie that's mainly made up of minorities for its leads. The MCU has come a long way in terms of representation. And hiring indie filmmaker Chloe Zhao to direct was a great way to bring some art and class to the formulaic franchise. However, the execution doesn't exactly pay off, because the finished film is a total drag. It's over 2.5 hours long, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but wow did I feel the slow burn of that runtime, because it failed to ever emotionally invest me in its grand-scale cosmic opera. The film dedicates most of its time to providing backstories for each and every member of its huge ensemble cast, resulting in a very bloated film that squashes under a dozen origin stories into an end-of-the-world narrative, and not once did I feel anything for these space heroes. When a character died, I didn't care. When two characters fell in love, I didn't care. When a character left the team, I didn't care. When a character turned out to be the bad guy, I didn't care. No matter how much spectacle or tragedy was thrown at me, I simply didn't give a crap. Look, I don't like throwing this word around, but there's no other way to describe Eternals. Pretentious. We're mainly just watching self-important superheroes waxing philosophically and commenting on humanity's follies from a distance.
Don't. We don't interfere in their wars.
This isn't war. It's genocide.
All while the film urges us to take everything that's happening very, very seriously, even though it relies on the crutch of typical MCU tropes, including silly comedy, comic relief characters, and pop culture references, none of which fit the overall bleak tone that the film is clearly going for.
I am glad that...
Wait, what's your service? I'm not getting any bars.
I sincerely think that Eternals could have been 10 times better if it was a TV show that took its time to let audiences bond with its characters in its first season, then used its second season to introduce the end of the world, all while fully 100% committing to the idea of an artsy superhero drama helmed by an indie filmmaker. So, we're halfway through this video. I'd just like to encourage folks to subscribe to my channel for more fun movie and animation related video content. Oh, and don't forget to click that notification bell too. Thank you! Captain America: The Winter Soldier. The second Captain America movie follows Steve Rogers as he ends up becoming a fugitive from S.H.I.E.L.D. and how he tries to track down the truth with help from Black Widow, Nick Fury, and the Falcon. There's a couple MCU films that fit into the spy thriller genre, and this conspiracy espionage stands out as the best one to me. Its whole appeal comes from the mystery of what on earth is going on, and who S.H.I.E.L.D. really is behind closed doors. All this teasing of information leads to the truth that S.H.I.E.L.D. is really the neo-Nazi regime Hydra, Steve's wartime foes that he thought he defeated back in the day. To make matters worse, it turns out that Hydra have transformed Steve's old war buddy Bucky Barnes into a super assassin, nicknamed the Winter Soldier, which means that Captain America has to fight against someone he deeply loves and cares about, making their fights incredibly personal and tricky, because Steve is having to take on someone equally as strong as him and a danger to society, but still his best friend under all of the brainwashing.
Please don't make me do this.
I also really enjoyed the entertaining interactions between Steve and Natasha on their road trip adventure. These two are very opposite. A square, patriotic war hero, and a sardonic government agent, so their back and forth banter can make for endearing breaks between all the action.
Was that your first kiss since 1945?
That bad, huh?
I didn't say that.
Well, it kind of sounds like that's what you're saying.
No, I didn't. I just wondered how much practice you've had.
You don't need practice.
Everybody needs practice.
It was not my first kiss since 1945.
However, what I respect the most about this movie is its message that evil can rise to positions of power, and that we can't rule out the possibility that major politicians have secret ties to fascist clubs. It's quite bold for a mainstream superhero movie to expose this real-life problem.
But this isn't the place to talk about it. This nice pen.
Thank you.
Come here.
Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a riveting and compelling espionage action film that I always look forward to on my MCU marathons. It's cool, sleek, and engaging fun. Iron Man. Tony Stark is a successful billionaire who sells weapons to the American military, but once he's kidnapped by a terrorist group and forced to work for them, he realizes that his products are super dangerous in certain hands. So after escaping said terrorists, Tony takes on the superhero role of Iron Man. However, Tony's competitive interim CEO, Obadiah Stane, who has been working with the same terrorist that kidnapped Mr. Stark, wants to use Tony's own advanced technology against him and become the evil Ironmonger. The first Iron Man movie also happens to be the first ever MCU movie, and that shows, in a good way mind you. There's no bells or whistles, no distracting foreshadowing, just a great origin story that works off the charisma of its star Robert Downey Jr., an actor who faced his own struggles as a celebrity and redeemed himself with a career comeback through this very film. This adds some rich sentiment to Tony Stark's own journey of restoring his reputation and reaching his best potential as a creative.
In 3, 2, 1.
It's Tony's self-reflection and arc of finding his own humanity, as well as the gradual development of the Iron Man suit, that makes his origin story so gripping to me. This is a billionaire who has wasted his talents and riches on fueling the fires of war, but once he sees the world outside his rose-tinted glasses, he comes to terms with the responsibility he plays.
Recent violence has been attributed to a group of foreign fighters referred to by locals as the 10 Rings. As you can see, these men are heavily armed and on a mission that could prove fatal to anyone who stands in their way.
Now sure, Obadiah Stane is one of the more bland MCU villains, but that was the norm in the early days of the franchise. Plus Jeff Bridges has an imposing build that gives him a menacing screen presence, and Stane's favourite weapon, the sonic taser, results in some truly creepy nightmare fuel.
Tony? Tony, are you there? Hello?
Breathe. Easy.
Iron Man has this humble place in the MCU that I find very charming. Black Panther. T'Challa, aka the Black Panther, has just been crowned king of the hidden African country of Wakanda, but he's divided between helping the world's problems and protecting Wakanda from threat. T'Challa then finds out that his own father, King T'Chaka, killed his own brother after being betrayed, leaving T'Challa's cousin, Eric, without a dad. Cut to present day, and Eric, now going by Killmonger, has arrived in Wakanda to challenge T'Challa to the throne. I never knew how much I loved this film until watching it again for this video. Its unique Afropunk world design in particular makes for a remarkable setting for a superhero film. Wakanda itself is truly advanced above the rest of the world, all thanks to T'Challa's tech genius sister Shuri, but some tribes fear that this technology will overshadow Wakanda's cultural roots, which leads to a fascinating exploration into black identity and ancient African traditions' place in a rapidly evolving society.
We have watched and listened from the mountains. We have watched with disgust as your technological advancements have been overseen by a child who scoffs at tradition.
As well as Wakanda's role on a globe where many black cultures are suffering at the hands of colonization and racism.
What would you have Wakanda do about it?
Share what we have. We could provide aid and access to technology and refuge to those who need it. Other countries do it, we could do it better.
This debate thickens once Killmonger arrives, a child of Wakandan and American heritage who wants to avenge his kinfolk, and the film does let him be right about some things. But he's on a path that will endanger Wakanda and fan the flames of war.
We're gonna send vibranium weapons out to our war dogs. They'll arm oppressed people all over the world, so they can finally rise up and kill those in power, and their children, and anyone else who takes their side. It's time they know the truth about us. We're warriors. The world's gonna start over, and this time we're on top.
Now, yes, Killmonger enters Wakanda a bit late into the film, so his villain role is a little last minute. It's one of my only criticisms with the film. However, he's a great storytelling tool regarding the movie's theme, because he's the end result of Wakanda's neglect of African American suffering, and someone who has experienced modern America as a black man firsthand. Plus, Michael B. Jordan is so dang charismatic and menacing in the part. Black Panther is a stylish, culturally rich, and deeply philosophical action-packed sci-fi film that marked a huge step forward for black representation in the MCU, and I'm glad that it's made my top 5 list. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. In James Gunn's third Guardians movie, Rocket the Raccoon is close to death, so the Guardians have to break into the very lab that experimented on the poor guy to find a way to save him. Unfortunately, the diabolical High Evolutionary, the very scientist who abused Rocket, is after Rocket for his ongoing project, which involves creating his very own version of a perfect Earth. I've not been very impressed with the MCU's new multiverse saga, but this latest entry is a blast, and the first banger we've had from the franchise in ages. Director James Gunn is a master of the black comedy genre to me, having a natural talent for weaving together dark humour with soulful drama, which means that Guardians 3 ends up taking us through a whirlwind of emotions. One moment I was laughing my arse off, but then seconds later I'd be tearing up like a baby, and not once did it feel like a distracting whiplash. I think it's because the comedy is built on how our characters are a close-knit family of misfits, who all care about saving their fluffy friend, but are comically hindered by their relatable social awkwardness.
We love our friend, but he is dying.
That's not dying. That's already dead. They'll think he's already dead.
They'll think we're here on a quest for revenge.
Drax, sit up!
At the same time, this is the tale of a victim of animal abuse revisiting his trauma. The High Evolutionary is a campy as hell villain with one ridiculous design, but it's his flamboyant arrogance and cold cruelty that make him wildly fun to hate. We want this sick asshole to pay.
Look at you. As if you were cobbled together by fat-fingered children. How could you be part of a perfect species? You're simply a medley of mistakes we could learn from and apply to the creatures that truly mattered.
By the finale, Rocket not only finds the confidence to return to the hellhole that brings him horrible memories, but also rescue his fellow wild animals from the hands of evil. Oh, and hot damn is it satisfying seeing Rocket's real family avenging their best friend. Guardians 3 is an S-tier MCU film that sincerely tackles the theme of scientific abuse, while also wrapping up a fun sci-fi comedy drama trilogy with a ribbon made of chosen family love. For the longest time, I considered Ant-Man and the Wasp to be my favourite MCU movie. After rewatching it though, I'll admit that it's not as amazing as I remember. It's good, but only reaches peak creativity in its bonkers finale. However, I realised that its predecessor, Ant-Man, is so much more fun and charming on new viewing. Scott Lang has just got out of jail for cat burglary and wants to restore his life back together so that he can get visitation rights with his daughter. But there's too much prejudice towards ex-cons in the work industry. So Scott goes back to his old crime life, only to be selected as the next Ant-Man by Dr. Hank Pym, a superhero role that will require Scott to learn shrinking science and ant communication, all for a mission to retrieve a shrinking suit from a corrupt businessman called Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket. What I really love about this origin movie is that it gives us the most relatable MCU hero's journey. Ant-Man is someone that the average audience can actually relate to. He's not a demigod, tech billionaire or super mutant, but a working class man who just wants a stable life in a world that won't give him a chance to grow. Society has pressured him into feeling like he has no choice but to be a criminal, even though he has so much potential. Seeing Scott transition into a superhero means so much, because it shows how redeemed criminals can translate their talents into unique skills for good. It's extra adorable how he's doing all of this for his daughter, Cassie, who Scott shares a special bond with.
You are my bestest friend.
What is that thing?
He's so ugly! I love him!
My heart swells so big watching Scott become a superhero for the little girl he deeply loves and wants to protect at all costs from her very own boogeyman.
There you are.
Daddy, is that you?
Hi, Peanut. Why don't you pick on someone your own size?
I also like how our villain is basically a blatant parody of Jeff Bezos, someone who has a history of exploiting the working class to build his own greedy empire. Seeing Scott, an American Robin Hood, taking on this smug, money-hungry scumbag is so dang satisfying. The heist itself is extremely fun from beginning to end too, from the intricate training that Scott has to endure to become Ant-Man.
You can do it, Scott. Come on.
They're not listening to me.
You have to commit. You have to mean it.
To the unnerving tension over whether Darren is onto the heist, to the excitement of the heavily planned break-in itself on the big night, and then finally, the super imaginative pint-sized action climax. Ant-Man might not be everyone's first choice for the best MCU film, because it's not as cool, grand scale, or spectacular as other movies in the series. But the thing is, I find a delightful charm to its small-scale story of a himbo daddy with a love for animals, taking on a cartoony caricature of the upper-class elite. That is my cup of tea, and at the end of the day, this is my personal list. Okay, so what would be your choices for the top 5 best and worst MCU films? Comment with your list below, plus don't forget to like and share this video. I've been Jambareeqi, cheerio folks.